Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth.
Candace Owens is a f***ing evil scumbag. She is a degenerate c***. She is burning everything down, and she's gloating and smiling while she does it. And you know what you f***ing told me? She has no security. She doesn't f***ing deal with the shit we have to deal with. She's a piece of shit. She's making everyone else suffer. And all of these f***ing conservatives out there that send me these f***ing messages have no f***ing balls to call her out. More and more people have started doing it. They send me these f***ing messages. Good for you, Tim. Good for you, Tim. I wasn't the first person to do it. I'm not going to take credit for that. But don't f***ing DM me like I did something for you as you cower, scared that she'll put you on her thumbnail and claim you benefited from Charlie Kirk's assassination, which he's doing to me right f***ing now.
Yeah, that was the...
I'm f***ing done with these people.
She has security, just not on the level of you.
Oh, yeah, the one fat guy you mentioned with no wall and no barrier in a suburban neighborhood with neighbors. She doesn't give two fucking shits. No one's out for her. She's lying about all of this. You told me you went to her house and she's got a 4-foot wall and one fat guy, and she doesn't give a shit about her security. Meanwhile, I get bullets fired at my fucking property, and I have to go live in the middle of nowhere. And I got fucking strangers coming up to my house in Maryland, breaking in. I got people showing up and beating up the residents who try to live there. How the am I even supposed to sell this property? And you know, it's all lies. It's all hypocrisy. And it is for the purpose of making money. And she does not live the way other people live. And she claims she liked Charlie. She loved Charlie. And she is burning everything down that he built because she is evil. She is evil. And I'll say it again. This conservative movement is fractured. It's fried, whatever it is. Okay. Republicans are on track to lose the midterms. They were actually trending in the other direction until Charlie Kirk was murdered. Yeah. And this is the point, isn't it? The most effective political assassination in history. And thanks to the likes of the vile Candace Owens, she has turned Turning Point into the perpetrators of the crime that was against them. I don't get paid by any of these people. I'm not on good terms necessarily with Turning Point USA. They didn't invite me to their stupid event. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. They invited me back after I started criticizing Candace. I'm not going to your event. I'm over all of this. The last thing that I need to deal with is a bunch of cowards in conservative media refusing to stand up to her. Megyn Kelly, come on. I appreciate the kind words, but come on. Such pathetic bullshit. You know, and I get people saying, Tim, you know, thank you so much for talking about it. I don't care. I'm not doing a favor for anybody. I'm not doing this to benefit anybody. Nobody's paying me. There's no fucking Russia. There's no fucking Israel. There's just me sticking my neck out and then risking dying for what? A bunch of cowards that don't want to stand up to protect themselves? People like fucking Candace Owens?
I couldn't believe that she put you in the thumbnail of her piece today.
I'm done.
The idea that she didn't imply that you had some benefit or that you benefit somehow. She
benefited. I think she's a Fed, and I think she killed Charlie. No one benefited more than her.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. Very interesting indeed. Tim Fool and Candace Owens apparently are in a little bit of a spat right now. But before we go any farther, there's something I gotta wonder. Tim Fool saying that somebody took some shots at the place where he records his little podcast. And there's one question that I want to know. One question that's very important to me. The only question that matters. Was the shooter white? I mean, I gotta ask that because Tim Fool has also been one of the main people who likes to regurgitate the lying talking points that black people commit all the crime in America. Black people are 7% of the population, but 90% of the murders, etc., etc. That being the case, well, considering how much he referenced Charlie Kirk, I gotta wonder if maybe this is the same situation because when Charlie Kirk got murked, I didn't even have to wait until they actually caught the guy who did it. I didn't even have to wait for any sort of security video to come to light. I immediately went onto Twitter and posted that the killer was a white man, even though there was no suspect, even though nobody even had a description. I knew that. Why? Because of the demographics, because of the doggone actuarial tables, because I actually look at the crime stats. I'm not some white supremacist clown or some white supremacist wannabe clown in the case of Tim Fool, who runs around spouting gibberish. So that being the case, I really hope that Tim Fool actually speaks on who he thinks the shooter is, and he can go ahead and tell us whether or not the shooter is black or white, because he's the main one telling us that black people are the only ones who do stuff like this. Nobody else does, so that being the case, just like with Charlie Kirk, we need to go ahead and test whether or not he's right. He should be held accountable for all the stupid stuff that he says. Because one thing's for sure, if Tim Fool is right that Candace Owens has somehow gotten him on the wrong side of the MAGA, alt-right, etc., and considering that there is no suspect who's been caught in this alleged shooting at his property, then the question is, what's the profile of the individual who would have done it? I think it's the same profile as the individual who shot Donald Trump in the ear, the same profile as the individual who punched Richard Spencer in the face, the same profile as the individual who murked Charlie Kirk, the same profile as Charlie Kirk's killer and Donald Trump's shooter and all of these school shooters and mass shooters. Yeah, the same profile that people like Tim Fool tell us isn't the case. Now again, there is no suspect in custody, and the only person who's actually saying that there's an investigation going on is Tim Fool himself. But for the sake of argument, let's go ahead and say that this is actually on the level and it's not just another right-wing fever dream. Who is it that Tim Fool is living in fear of? See, he didn't have to have fear like this when you had the Black Lives Matters rallies going on, when you had the uprisings of 2020. It wasn't Antifa that had him scared like this. It happens to be the white right, the MAGA right that he's a part of. They're the ones that he's scared of. They're the ones that he's worried about. So all of his BS talk about black stats and how we have to be able to speak the truth, yeah, we got to be able to speak the truth, but if you compound a mountain of lies, well, the truth just might decide to pay you a visit, just like it did Charlie Kirk. You know, these anti-black racists, they got the survival instincts of a dung beetle. Worse than that, actually, because a dung beetle doesn't stink as much as Tim Pool does. And you notice that he says the conservative movement is cooked. He's already declaring a time of death for the conservative movement. It's DOA as far as he's concerned. This is coming from one of the young punks, young guns of the white right saying this. This is supposed to be the future of the movement, and he's saying the movement has no future. The conservative movement is cooked. Yeah, I know Tim Fool is Eurasian, but the white right is who he identifies with. It's who he carries water for, so that's where he's slotted. Now, the fact that this guy is running around saying this, and he's one of those people who has millionaires paying his bills, but he's saying that the conservative movement is cooked, what that really means is his ability to try to be some sort of big wig inside the movement, or thinking to himself that he's going to be some sort of shot caller, that's clearly done. That's what he means by it's cooked. He means that his position within this bowel movement is cooked. That's what he really means. And it says a lot that that's what he's doing, and just how weak, just how flimsy and feeble is Tim Fool's position within the bowel movement. Well, he's been intimating that on December 19th, that could very well be his last podcast. That's what basically he's been hinting. December 19th, he could throw in the towel because the cost for security, you see, that's basically exceeding all of the things. Now, this is a guy who basically has been bragging that he's got bread, he's got money, but now he's saying the exact opposite. Security costs have bled him dry. The cost of security, whatever the hell that is for him, that's apparently exceeded all other costs associated with his operation. So is this idiot really going to throw in the towel on December 19th? I wouldn't mind, but truth be told, I don't really follow this creep, so I don't know for sure, nor do I care, though I will say this. A lot of these race grifters like Tim Fool, they're allergic to work. Tim Fool has been exposed on multiple occasions for being allergic to reading, too. He's so lazy he doesn't even read the articles that he talks about, at least not in their entirety. Like most low-information people, he just looks at the headline and just moves on. He simply assumes that whatever's in the body of the article, well, it must reflect what the headline says. But on more than one occasion, he's made a fool of himself when he actually bothered to read some of those articles, and it turned out that what was in the article was actually completely different than what the headline said. And that's what the white media specializes in. They have headlines that say one thing, then you read the article and they just bury it at the bottom or midway in the article somewhere. They bury the fact that actually the reality was the opposite of whatever they claimed. For someone who claims to be so media savvy, he sure does fall for that trick a lot. Now, as the black media, we show you time and again how the white media does this, but for the low IQ, low information racists like Tim Fool, basic literacy isn't much of a priority, and it's too much effort for him to put out. So I'm sure that he wants to find a way out of podcasting. I think that's what this really is. I think he's been looking for a way out for a while now, because he didn't want to be in this space to begin with. Just look at what's been going on with the Daily Wire. They've been trying to make movies for years now, but these fools aren't entertaining. They're not even interesting. When all you know how to do is whine and complain about black people and make up phony white grievance, you're not going to appeal to anyone other than your fellow anti-black delusionals. That's something to remember about these racist podcasters, from Tim Fool to Ben Shapiro, to Stephen Crowder, to Michael Knowles. Most of these morons wanted to be in entertainment. In fact, all of them took a run at it and failed. That's the class and caliber of individuals that we're dealing with. Failed actors, failed comedians, failed talk show hosts, failed wannabe TV personalities, all of them failures. And it's not just their pathetic quote-unquote comedians who crashed and burned, it's all of them who have. That's why they attack TV shows and movies constantly. That's the reason why they seem to have a real bone to pick with Hollywood. They didn't have the talent or the likability for anyone to actually put money into a TV show or have a movie about these idiots, so they declared war on the very institution that refused to accept them. And they've been telling their brain-dead audience that the movies are dying and that every TV show is woke because it's got black people in them. And these morons, they're actually angry at the fact that they're not in these TV shows or movies. And what do these guys do to respond to the fact that movies are dying and TV shows are all woke? What do they do to respond? They start making movies and they're horrible. The Daily Wire's been putting out crap for years now, and the stuff they squat out looks like it belongs on public access television. It's not even YouTube quality. Just look at what they did with Gina Carano. Daily Wire gave Gina Carano her worst movie of all time, which is saying something considering that practically everything she's been in has been unwatchable. And these are the guys who think to themselves that they're going to compete with Hollywood. They can't even compete with Vimeo. These clowns will only appeal, at most, to the same handful of racist chumps who like their race-baiting nonsense. But for people with an IQ higher than their shoe size, they'll immediately recognize that the garbage these racists put out isn't entertaining. It's the same reason that Barry Weiss is damned to fail. Hell, the Orange Man's already whining and complaining about 60 Minutes after the Marjorie Greene interview. He's griping that the Ellisons aren't running things any differently than the people who were in charge of CBS before the merger. But as for Tim Fool, that's probably his real motivation for what's going on here. His anti-black race grift has brought him some amount of money, but at this point, his views are down, his revenues are down, and he's looking for a way out. So he's blaming Candace Owens as if he didn't know that basically she's a professional pipe bomb thrower, and as if she's the worst thing that ever happened to him. Give me a break. This is who the white right's heroes are. Talentless creeps who didn't want to be there in the first place, didn't want to be podcasting, and didn't want to have to be slumming it up for their racist listeners. And they've been looking for a way out. But since Hollywood rejected them, they turned to being white race grifters because there's usually some old rich white racist with more money than sense who will give them a few dollars to attack black people. Look at who funds race hustlers like Ed Blum. Look at who is bankrolling people like Chris Rufo and Richard Spencer. Look who is funding Charlie Kirk. And as for Candace Owens, as of this morning's briefing, her only response has basically been a sole Twitter tweet asking if Tim Fool is okay. Well, I can answer that one for her. No, he's never been okay, and neither has she. They're both two peas in a pod. Rotten peas. Now, between Donald Trump and Marjorie Greene's public spat, and now Tim Fool and Candace Owens going at it, all that scared talk about Project 2025 is looking really stupid about now isn't it? See, I need my people to understand that there's a big difference between the kind of arguments and fights that are actually relevant to us and the usual jockeying for position that the mouthpieces on both the white right and the white left do with each other. It's the same reason that so many of these white liberals are completely and thoroughly opposed to tearing down white supremacy. They're not really opposed to white supremacy. They just don't like their place in it. That's the only real schism that exists in the dominant society. That's why class struggle is their perennial obsession, because that's the real problem that they've got amongst each other, not race. White supremacy is their friend, whether they're on the white right or the white left. It doesn't matter. They both benefit from it no matter what their political affiliation may be, because the defining line for white supremacy is not political affiliation, it's not political ideology, it is race. And anti-black racism is the foundation of it all. And before I go any farther, no, it's not that the white right doesn't want to harm black Americans. Of course they do. They've been doing it all along. The problem is that the Democrats, the people who these mouthpieces claim want to stick up for us, they haven't done a damn thing about it. And yet you got these shills and suck-ups and bootlicks who want to talk as if these people are our only hope. To hear the DNC shills tell it that's how it is. No, it is not. A lot of black people, even online individuals, fell for the scam. They fell for all that fear talk. The job of the black media is to get our people to stand on business, but you can't stand when you're busy running scared. So all those people who spent the last 2 years telling us that Project 2025 was going to be the end of America as you know it, no, it's just the continuation of America as it's always been. All of those predictions that there was going to be some sort of Fourth Reich arising in America, as if America up until this point has been anything other than a slightly watered-down Third Reich. Well, take a look at Tim Fool. This is one of the shock troops for that would-be American Gestapo, and you see how much courage he's got. Of course, Tim Fool is lashing out at Candace Owens and anyone else, and these anti-black podcasters are forming a circular firing squad with each other. That's how corrupt movements like theirs always are. The worst thing that could happen to them isn't defeat, but rather what they think to be victory, because when that happens, they always turn their guns on each other. These people don't have any real principles. I've been telling you that for 20 years. White supremacy does not have any real principles. All they have is situational ethics and moral relativism. Whatever is expedient to their interest in the moment, that's their actual principles. They can say one thing one moment and the exact opposite the next. Like Neely Fuller said, white supremacy believes in taking both sides of the conversation because that's what's most expedient for them. They're just a bunch of racist opportunists. When there's one big dominant personality who's getting all the donor dollars and the attention, they'll pretend to be one big happy clavern then. But as soon as a Bill O'Reilly gets fired, or a Rush Limbaugh croaks, or a Charlie Kirk gets murked, the instant they think that they spy a vacuum that they can fill, an opportunity to climb the ladder and get advertiser or donor money, they're going to take it, and they'll be ruthless about chopping off each other's heads. Their problem is that after 40 years of white right-wing rhetoric becoming more and more bellicose and unhinged and extreme, the white right base doesn't respond to a reasonable message anymore. Not that these people were ever reasonable to begin with. This is the cumulative result of the Rush Limbaughs and the Michael Savages and all of those sawed-off bigots of the 80s and 90s on right-wing hate radio doing all their extremist rhetoric for so long. Their base isn't willing to accept a reasonable message because they've been conditioned to see reasonable as weak. So you have to be extreme just to get their attention. It's the only thing they see as credible. They're not smart enough to know what's in their interest, and they don't have enough honesty to realize that they are their own worst enemies. So this is what they want instead. That's the reason why people like Nick Fuentes have become so popular, because this is the kind of message that they can actually digest. Extremism is strength in their eyes, and that being the case, whenever they have a disagreement with somebody, they can't just say that so-and-so is wrong or misguided. Instead, they're going to say that this person is the devil himself. The same kind of performative extremism and ridiculous hyper-exaggeration that they've always launched at the black community, now they're doing it to each other. And they could care less whether or not what they're saying about each other is true. After all, there's no honor among thieves. Candace Owens is playing it cool right now, and why not? Ben Shapiro tried to take her down. He had his entire pro-Israel machine attacking her, and not only did Candace Owens survive his attack, she's in a stronger position than he is. His attacks didn't come to much of anything. Ben Shapiro has been exposed as nothing more than a paper tiger by the white right. And at this point, it won't be long before he's sent off to the glue factory. And if somebody who at least had something resembling marginal political savvy like Ben Shapiro couldn't harm Candace Owens, then she has absolutely nothing to worry about from a two-bit moron like Tim Fool. Owens knows that there's no reason to get into a spitball fight with him, at least not the kind that he wants to do. She can go ahead and just take a couple of slaps at him and let him wither on the vine, because that's what's been happening to him. This crusty, musty little puss bag thought that he was going to be the next Joe Rogan or something, and instead he's already looking like he's going to throw in the towel, or at least that's how he's talking. Now, by the way, is he actually going to stop podcasting on December 19th? If I was a betting man, I'd say no, because he does need the money, and what the hell else does he have that's as lucrative for him as this? What he thinks he wants to do is to give his view count a shot in the arm, so he's trying to get some quickie attention for himself by saying, I'll do it, I'll put a gun to my head and quit this show, I'll do it. It reminds me of how in the 1980s you had that guy Oral Roberts. He was one of the cell-evangelists who was on TV, and this guy said that if he didn't raise a certain amount of money from his viewers by such and such a date, then God would call him home. I think that Tim Fool's hoping that putting a clock on some sort of final podcast will produce the same boost in viewers and revenues for himself. But again, as I said earlier, Tim Fool is good to take shots at because he is a genuine moron. But as far as actually caring about whether or not his podcast continues, I wasn't paying attention to it in the first place. So if it disappears, I won't even notice. And as for the alleged shooting that he claimed took place at his podcast studio, there is one question I gotta ask that should come out of that. How many years has Tim Fool spent saying that the white right aren't extremists, and they aren't violent, and that it's the left who are the terrorists and the killers? How many years has Tim Fool spent saying that the left are the ones who are crushing free speech and trying to intimidate people? Well, who is it that's terrorizing him? Who is it that Tim Fool thinks is trying to shut him up? When he conjures a mental image of who it was who was shooting at his spot, was it BLM? Was it Antifa? If it does turn out that these claims of a shooter are real, then just like with Charlie Kirk, when they do find the person who shot at his place is going to look just like Charlie Kirk's killer, which is to say it won't be someone who looks like Candace Owens or a BLM supporter or even some blue-haired weirdo over at Antifa. It'll be someone who looks just like Tim Fool. The kind of MAGA alt-right bottom feeder that he's so terrified of is someone who looks like himself. And perhaps that's what deep down inside has him so furious. He can't say it, so he's trying to rage in other ways. He's a liar, and always has been. He knows that neither he nor any of his alt-right listeners are in any danger from black Americans, and that was just a lie that people like him tell to justify when some racist with or without a badge kills a black person. To him, it's all a game. But if what he's saying is true, it's not a game now. It's not a rhetorical exercise. And who is Tim Fool scared of? Not what he claimed was the most violent demographic in America, the perpetual boogeyman that only existed in that empty head of his. He's scared of Candace Owens, he claims, who, by the way, has no ability to galvanize any sort of killers against anyone. Hell, even Ben Shapiro wasn't desperate enough to try a ploy like that. Are we supposed to believe that Candace Owens, of all people, has anyone who's actually loyal to her, much less a group of goons that she can send after her enemies? Stop it. Wait, on second thought, don't stop. Keep it up. Let this kind of idiocy drag on and on. Let it get nice and ugly and stay ugly. Let these creeps create the kind of divide amongst themselves that never goes away. The same way the alt-right fractured and crumbled after the Charlottesville riot is the same way the MAGA right is doing right now. And fittingly, it's the same young punks who were trying to grift off of this thing 10 years ago who are tearing it apart now because it was always about self-interest. Donald Trump was not and is not the leader of a political ideology any more than Charlie Kirk was. These white supremacist mouthpieces are just leaders of a cult of personality. There is no political ideology guiding them, no doctrine, no core beliefs other than we hate black people. And yes, you can monetize that because there's rich and poor racists who will throw money at people to shout anti-black gibberish. But ultimately, hate speech rises and falls right there because there's nothing to follow it. What happened when white supremacy won the game of colonialism? At the end of the 19th century, they had managed to get the grip on the world that they had always wanted. And what did they do? They immediately followed that up by the white colonial powers of Europe having 2 world wars. They turned their guns on each other the moment that they won the great game. Because that's how it is for them. Having achieved their position in the world through violence, they were going to continue to practice it regardless because that's all they knew how to do. That is normal for them. Well, the times may change, but these people don't. This is why black empowerment is more than melanin. It's an oppositional ideology to white supremacy. That's why it has a power that white supremacy cannot have. It actually has an ideology behind it. Tim Fool isn't white. And neither is Candace Owens, but both of them are fighting to be the leaders of the dying power that white primacy used to represent. Their claims about black people aren't real, but the harm that they could do to one another is. And that being the case, I say, let them fight. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Gary Jones, Atu Hammond, Leonard Cottingham, Roxanne Allen, and Gavin Andrade. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.